Test 1, 2. Test. Guess it takes a second to warm up. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
Test. I think mine's working.
Yours is definitely, is mine on? Am I muted? Test 1, 2. Now I'm working. Okay. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Yeah, I can't really trust this because it is coming through on here. So that's the only downside about this. It makes me nervous when I don't see the bars move. But they move over here, so we're good. All right. So again, it's not live. It's highly editable.
Okay.
It's just conversation.
Yeah.
That's all.
Do you want me to look at you?
Yep. You look.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the other thing.
All
It's
right,
just like
yeah.
we're just having a conversation. Try to pretend none of this stuff is here.
Okay.
Which I know is hard to do.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's it's just like talking. The vibe. I love the way Chad described like our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a conversation you might overhear at the bar after a great day of scientific talks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the vibe. And it's, we just want to have a comfortable conversation. That's all I'm
Okay,
going
yeah.
for. All right? Good. So I'll do a quick intro,
Okay.
and then we'll jump into some questions. Good. Today I'm sitting down with Tyler Moore, a senior scientist in molecular and cellular biology at Celerion. Tyler works deeply in immunology and cell-based bioanalysis, and I wanted to talk with him about how he thinks about the impact and the rigor and responsibility when science meets real clinical samples. So Tyler, what is important to you in life that directly or indirectly kind of connects to the work that you do?
I always wanted to make a difference, so I wanted to make a difference somehow in the world. So I started out in a lot of different careers, always with that kind of in mind. But on a bigger scale, I like that we can do that from the aspect of what we're doing makes a difference to the patients. But I like that on daily, you can make a difference on whatever I do, because it's so interconnected here. Whatever I do makes the job for someone else easier. So we're not isolated. So it's kind of like a moving car, that each part of the engine is kind of working together. So you can kind of make a difference on a micro scale as well as the big, long-term patient scale.
Excellent. And you spent years in academic research and government research, including the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, before moving into CRO and clinical bioanalysis here. What shifted for you when patients entered the picture?
Yeah, you think about patients and that income, you think about that endpoint all the time. When you're doing that research, you're just further removed, you're further upstream. So you always have in mind that I'm doing this project because you want to improve human health, but you don't ever know if it's ever going to get there. So now we're kind of standing on the shoulders of all of that work, and it's almost like taking it that extra little step, and there's an extra responsibility there, I think, because what all has gone into it. All the basic science and all of the hard work that has gotten these therapies to this point, and then you're just thinking, you just gotta make sure you're doing everything that you can do so this thing can get out there, So it's kind of that interesting aspect there of knowing what it takes to get that background, know how much work it gets to figure out what mechanisms to attack, what therapeutics are going to be useful, and then, getting that extra little piece. So it's kind of fun being on this end of it here.
Excellent, excellent. For someone outside of biotech, how would you describe and explain what you work on and why it matters?
Yeah, I think, it's everyone has benefited from some kind of medical therapy, I think. And what we're doing is basically making sure those therapies, you can trust them, that they're going to do what you hope that they're going to do and that they're safe. And then I think also, doing everything you can to make them as affordable as possible. Because I always think about, I think our job is like the more efficient I can be, the less costs that are going to get passed on to the drug, because it's going to be cheaper to make, it's going to get cheaper to be, to the endpoint, so, I always think about everything that we're doing in terms of efficiency of, can I develop this method, quicker, can I get this thing done faster? Then it's all less time that, gets to the endpoint. So, people who are involved in the process, but if, received a therapy, they're aware of all of those things, but maybe not what goes into it, that all the little individual experiments and all that planning,
Most people, have no idea how much time, effort, people, expense that goes into clinical research. It's monumental in time and cost. And so the fact that you think about these things besides, hey, we try and get it there, faster for the patient, yes, faster and maybe less expensive for the sponsor, but hopefully, that will affect, trickle down to the individual as well. And I think that's great.
Yeah, that it takes resources to put all of this person energy and like resources in terms of reagents to, every time you're doing these experiments. So, it's a big system. So the fewer of those resources you can use, I think that's the more efficient you can be.
Outstanding. So a lot of your work focuses on cell health, timing, sample handling. How do you think about rigor when the biology itself is fragile?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a cool movement in bioanalysis right now, is that so many of these sponsors are relying on assays that are requiring not just, like a live cell, but a responsive cell in order to see the effect of a drug. So we're doing a lot of assays where we're taking out cells and they have to be stimulated and they have to respond in certain ways to see if a drug works. And the thing I really like about the bioanalytical field right now is that these are common problems, and even though it's a competitive space, the field is all wanting to work together because everyone wants that endpoint to be good. We all want quality. So you go to conferences and people are trying to figure out, how can we preserve samples longer? How can we get a better, still do these similar assays that everyone's looking for? And how can we figure out the best way to do it? And I think it's interesting because we're trying to get to that same point together. Even though there's some competition, but there's kind of this endpoint of trying to get the best sample possible.
Absolutely, it's actually what drew me into this field. Besides the personal reasons, some healthcare issues in my family, is and I'd been in a highly competitive field in the past. IT, data centers. Many moons ago before I got into pharma biotech. And it was remarkable to me that in business, in a corporate world, there's places in the science and in the conferences where competitors are collaborating on what's the best way we can do this to the endpoint to help people. And I love that about this space. When studies involve complex logistics or tight timelines, what do you think good collaboration really looks like?
Yeah, I was amazed kind of jumping into the clinical trial space from previous research where academic research is a little siloed. You kind of hunker down in the lab and you work on your project. Here, everything's so interconnected. So everything you do depends upon so many other people. It's not just other scientists, and it's like the technical writers and sample management, and all of it works together. I think one thing we've really noticed is talking to these other groups that you maybe don't interact with daily and figure out what's the thing that makes their job the most difficult. Sometimes the thing that makes their job the most difficult is something that you're doing that you don't need to be doing. So we find that you can figure out each of these pieces because they're so interconnected. You can figure out that we can improve the whole system by just changing one little thing, and it influences this group and this group and this group. And I think that's it's because of the complex system. I mean, that's part of it, is that little tiny changes can really improve how the whole machine works compared to when you're just working on your own and it kind of lives or dies based on your own work.
Outstanding. And that leads really well into kind of the next question, which is, as someone who's taught and mentored others and students and so forth, what kind of scientific mindset do you try to model?
Yeah, I think when I was teaching, and here as well, I would always try to impart the lesson. I think that there's really no greater joy than doing good work that matters. And sometimes that comes with pressure. And, I would face that with students, who are feeling pressures in classes. And same thing with, analysts who are working on projects here. And that pressure is a privilege, because that pressure means that you're doing something that people care about. Not just here, people, sponsors care about. And, the funding groups for those sponsors care about it, and the patients ultimately care about it. So you can do work that doesn't matter, and it comes with less pressure. But you can feel fortunate that you're doing work that matters, because it's there. That pressure is that signal that you're doing work that matters. And so I've kind of tried to impart that to students. I've tried to impart that to people here. I try to think of that myself, because sometimes you feel that, because you're feeling that pressure with urgency of timelines, or with like trying to improve the quality of something, and it feels intellectually difficult, but that, okay, that pressure is just a sign that you're doing something valuable, right? If you weren't, then it wouldn't be there.
I think that's an excellent perspective. I love that. Pressure is a privilege.
Yeah.
And it's something, that I will, I'm going to take that and internalize that myself. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Professors develop axioms, I think, just to, stick with students a little more. So
it's great.
Yeah.
Well, it works. It works well. Glad you can bring that into our world. It's cool. What keeps you engaged and excited about the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, I think my background in immunology, and studying that field extensively and then teaching it before coming here, one of the coolest things is when a new therapy is targeting like a textbook mechanism. So it's something where, I maybe would have asked to former students, like, if you were to inhibit this pathway or activate this pathway, what disease might it treat? What could you do to this pathway? And now there's therapies that are actually doing this, which is, it's really cool. So we'll have a new sponsor with a drug will come in, and they'll say, this is what we're doing, this is the mechanism of action of our drug, and it immediately, rings a bell of like, we've always been hoping that somebody would target this, and now, so it's kind of that, like something familiar. It's these textbook pathways that are finally coming into real therapies, and I think it's cool because it means the basic science works, since that's really my background, that, all of this work that built into this, textbook immunology was meaningful, because using that, you can make a therapy that works, which is kind of cool. That's kind of the part that always ignites me when I see these.
Fantastic. I think that your well-rounded background and having that perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it probably helps you to maybe even stay more motivated from, like you said, those textbook moments to basic research to someone approaches you and says, hey, we made this work, and that's got to be exciting. There's
an extra level of responsibility there too, because if you think about, some of these pathways have been studied for decades, and if a particular therapy is the culmination of decades of work, you don't want to be responsible for that failing, right? So, hundreds of people have really, it's not just the company that is putting it over the edge with the particular drug or something. It's really hundreds of people over decades that have really come to understand the basic biology, and that is all why, we've got this new therapy coming out, so there's a little bit of responsibility to make sure that all holds, that, you got to develop the best method, and you got to get the most quality data to show that this really does work the way it's supposed to.
Excellent. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for sharing your story, how you think about the science and the responsibility behind it. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of your answers and the rigor that you bring to our work together.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. Awesome. That was great.
Yep.
Absolutely great.
Thanks.
So good.